Welcome to Babylova Brews Reviews. We are doing the Conclave tonight. A very interesting movie. However, before we get to that, we are going to be going over some Christmas bourbon. Cleveland has decided to bring us this beautiful bourbon. It is the Cleveland Christmas Bourbon, and it greets you with the aroma of Grandma's kitchen. Just before Christmas, when she has been
alcoholic
prepping all the holiday goodies filled with cinnamon, nutmeg, and clove. The flavor doesn't disappoint either. Fruitcake and eggnog flavors without the heaviness or the cream.
Daddy, why is Grandma naked?
Grandma was always right there with a tray of cookies.
It's a 43 ABV, and it's 86 proof. This is brought to us by the delightful Gumby.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gumby.
All right. Cheers, fellas.
Cheers.
Cleveland Whiskey. You remember when I set off the alarm downtown?
Yes,
When I went to pick up their whiskey one time?
Right off the rip, that nose. Ooh.
Beautiful color.
So
Wow.
I'm getting raisins on the top. A little bit of maybe a caramel flavor, smell.
Yeah, I see the raisins for sure.
Yeah. There's almost like a ginger smell to it.
Mm-hmm.
I had the flu a month ago. My nose still doesn't work.
Oh, man, that's
Like
so
it's clear,
nice.
and I just don't
Yeah.
smell anything.
Keith and his COVID.
Maybe it was COVID.
We didn't say that word.
Oh, crap. Man, we were just talking about don't say that word.
To bleep that. That is delightfully smooth.
It is.
I almost feel like I'm sipping on gingerbread.
Yeah.
But it's got that. Wait, so this is bourbon, right? You said?
Yeah,
Like it's still got like it almost has like that whiskey style sizzle in the back of your mouth. At the
it
same time,
does.
which I
Yeah,
love.
yeah, that is delightful. It's
Cleveland whiskey making bourbon.
insanely
It
smooth.
tastes like whiskey a little.
Yeah. It's very nuanced. I appreciate that about it. You can get all the flavors.
You're not kidding. That's nice. All right. So, Gumby,
Mm-hmm.
how have you been?
Oh, man, doing good. Yeah, keeping busy. Music still happening. Life still happening. Can't wait till the kids go back to school.
Awesome. And thank you again for bringing this awesome cigar.
Oh, we didn't even talk about our cigar.
These cigars are phenomenal. Please highlight us
Yes,
and
yes.
enlighten us.
So
These were
these are Arturo Fuentes Anijos, and they only come out once a year around the holidays. If you're lucky enough to get them, because people pre-order these things and they're bought before they ever get out. So
man.
me and my friend were able to snatch some of them up, and these ones are about, I think, 32 a pop.
Oh man.
So you can imagine what a box of 20 would cost.
So again, Gumby, thank you.
Oh man, yeah. And we're celebrating somebody's birthday.
I thank you too
Late.
for the secondhand smoke.
You're welcome. So
Yeah.
Whose birthday is it? I don't know. Who?
Well, someone had a birthday that just passed,
Yeah. I just turned the big 5-0.
and I'm like, yeah, I had to pull the big gun out with the cigars for that.
I guess, sir. Yeah, I'm officially 50 now.
Yeah.
I don't feel it though. Honestly, I still feel 26. I mean, I spar rounds and rounds and rounds with my students. My endurance levels on kettlebells are better than ever. I don't feel slowed down whatsoever.
No, you're an
Nice.
inspiration, no doubt.
Well,
No
thank you.
doubt.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fine physical specimen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, sir.
That's not the bourbon talk.
That's right.
Not yet.
Giggity.
Keith, what you been up to?
Oh man, I got back. We had my last conference of the year in London. Things I'm thinking about that are interesting lately. Oh man, my computer is not muted. There we go. Was it 2 days? It was Friday. It was 2 days ago, right? Yeah. We went to an NBA G League game.
Really? Yes, I've been to one. They're fun, aren't
cool. Were you at one this year?
Yeah.
Oh, so well, I guess it depends on when you were there. Were you in one of the ones in Public Hall?
No, I was at probably one of the last ones at
Wolstein.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was so cool. So like this year, when my wife said she got tickets, like I was just like, oh, it's gonna be in the Wolstein Center, which is the like Cleveland State University arena. And basically any sport I've ever been to that isn't a major league sport, I've gone to Wolstein Center.
Okay.
Like I got my vaccine at Wolstein Center. Like everything else happens in Wolstein Center. But they like after the start of the season, they moved to Cleveland Public Auditorium, which is like 100-year-old building. And it's like, I guess, would you call that like Art Deco style? Like it just screams Roaring 20s on the inside. Like it's a very multi-purpose hall. I remember going there for it was like a pre-confirmation thing for my wife was entering the Catholic Church.
Wait, which one? You mean the old convention center?
No, Public Hall, the one across from City Hall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess it could be a convention center. Like it's an open, floor. It has all the seats, the normal fixed seats are on a balcony, and the balcony has that like just really 1920s design.
The one with the ballroom.
Have a ballroom?
No,
but it does have a stage. So like actually they've set up a basketball court in it. There was some they've certainly definitely had concerts there. They set up a basketball court, and then like behind the jumbotron that comes down, you can actually see the old stage. And I think it's literally the most unique sports venue in America right now.
Really?
Because this mixture of new and old, of a building that clearly wasn't intended for that being used for this modern purpose.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty fun game. Like you were like, because of those balconies, you are super close to the action. Like you are breathing right on Bronny. And it was Bronny. It was the first two games of the regular season they call it now. We were the first one was against the South Bay Lakers. So we got to see Bronny.
Nice.
That's pretty sweet.
I got to see him kick a ball off his feet, at the beginning of the game. Get out of bounds.
Fairly epic.
So yeah, it was fun. The concession stands were absolute Hunger Games. There was like 2 in the line. Like I spent 75% of the first half of the game in the concession stand line.
Yeah.
So don't eat there.
That wasn't much different when it was at the.
Okay.
Actually, I didn't see it at the Wolstein Center. It was at where the Cavs play.
Oh, that's right. Because at the beginning of the year they did Gund Arena.
Yeah.
Not Gund Arena.
Yeah.
Quicken Loans Arena.
Right.
And then they moved over to the public hall.
It was the same thing. I'm like, hey, you can't get food here.
Yeah.
It's like maybe 3 or 4 things open. So
so stuff a bunch of candy bars in your pocket.
But I did win a lottery ticket there.
Oh man,
really?
The 50-50?
Yeah, they dropped them from the ceiling.
They dropped them from the ceiling.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
I caught a T-shirt.
Nice.
I was about to just like throw it over my head again because like I didn't even want the T-shirt. I just want to catch it.
Yeah. Those games are fun and super affordable.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. So kind of like the basketball equivalent of like the Captains.
I don't know what the Captains are.
Oh, you haven't gone to Captains?
The single minor league baseball team.
Yeah.
The Captains once like 20 years ago or something. But actually, I would say G League though. Like on the Cavs G League team, there are 5 players who could be called up to the Cavs at any time.
Oh, for sure.
And 4 or 5 of them have already been called up for the season. And like the top one has already played 18 games. So you're seeing most of the time, you're probably seeing folks with NBA experience.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nance will probably make
it. So your goal this year is to go to a Captains game.
Okay.
Over in Lake County.
Right.
It's kind of like it's baseball, but the difference is that the venue is so much more friendly. It's everything's easy to get to. It's super family friendly. Everything is focused toward giving you like a good experience. So it's if you enjoy baseball, it's a great venue.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So, but this movie,
Conclave, where you know what they say?
Let's rip the Band-Aid off. Come on.
Where there's smoke, there's a papal conclave.
Smoke, cigars.
I like that one, Gubby. So initially, and we should probably premise this. So we'll give our initial impressions spoiler-free, and then we'll do nothing but spoilers after that.
And also like a little bit of a primer for like if you're gonna watch the movie, we're gonna set the stage on who the characters are, because it's a bunch of Cardinals. They're all old men who are dressed in the same clothes, so it can be a little confusing when you first start the movie. And then like about halfway through, and we'll mark the time in the actual description of the show when the spoilers start, because there are spoilers.
Oh, there are.
Yeah,
and there's actually a couple of nice little twists inside the story too, which is interesting, because for something that is like 95% all dialogue, it never disappointed. It actually sustained a really good, like, angsty feeling. Like you keep waiting for the next thing to happen.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
It keeps it moving.
Yep.
So it was more like an intellectual thriller.
Yeah, I would say that. And also like does like I don't know what you call this, like a set piece, kind of like not like an action set piece, but like they're very obsessed with like capturing details of the Conclave experience.
Oh yeah,
like all the Cardinals walking in their umbrellas across the courtyard, or the smoke coming out of the thing, like the new, like sitting down for, I'm trying to think of like just the entrance of all of them, and like the sisters preparing.
Yep.
So like you have a lot of those, like you're just hearing that the dramatic music going on and watching them set up like this frantic thing that's happening. Like everybody's coming together and doing something important. All these details matter, and then you get into these little like important conversations everywhere.
It's dramatic music, but it's not overstated.
Right? Yeah.
Ever. It's I mean, I think 80% of it's like violin. Something like that.
Yeah. So we should probably explain first, though, like what the movie's about.
What is a conclave? I mean, because let me just say this: you don't have to be Catholic to enjoy the movie.
Absolutely. I mean, I think of the last time there was a conclave, which is where the next pope is chosen after the last pope dies or resigns.
Right.
I think of the last couple times that happened. That's been like a world cultural event.
Yeah.
Because the pope kind of matters no matter where you are in your religious journey. Like it's a culturally important person. It's someone who is a head of state, basically, who interacts with heads of state, who sets the agenda of a well-moneyed, kind of well-oiled institution that pulls a lot of levers in our culture and politics.
I would agree with that. Give a quick synopsis of the story itself. Conclave is a 2024 is a mystery thriller directed by Edward Berger, adapted from Robert Harris's 2016 novel. The film delves into the clandestine process of electing a new pope following the sudden death of the incumbent, highlighting the political maneuvering and personal ambitions of the Cardinals involved. So it's kind of like exactly what Keith just said.
Like it's like they're trying to. If you discount anything else about the story and just go in and be like, this is a movie about like trying to be like an insider look at a fictional but realistic papal conclave. Like we all see as normal people what's going on outside the building. We see the smoke. What's the smoke for no, and what's the smoke for yes? We got a pope.
White is yes.
White is yes.
No.
Okay, black is no. So we see the smoke. We see the people on the news being like, we don't have a pope yet. And they might say, like, these people are inside, but we don't know anything else. We don't know anything. So this movie's trying to take you inside and be like, you now know everything they know. And you're going to expect, based on, say, the trailer, you're going to expect, like, political intrigue. It's probably one of the most guttural impulses, or what you're thinking when you're getting into this.
Yeah, and without getting, again, we're not going to dive into spoilers yet, but we would like to give a quick, brief description of who the players are.
Yeah, this will help a lot. Like, I mean, I felt like I had to kind of watch it twice to really understand who everybody is, because you get introduced to them in a minute, and then you really only understand them through other conversations they have with each other. If you like miss one conversation, like you're missing a lot.
Oh yeah.
And they all have different motivations and different reasons. Well, they're all there because they're Cardinals, but they all have they all have different proximities to power and interest in proximity to power.
Keith, can you please explain to me, what does a bird have to do with this?
Wait, what did I say? I said something, a bird.
You said a cardinal.
Oh, cardinal. So actually, that's a good clarification. Only cardinals get invited to a conclave, right?
Yeah. So Keith, what is a cardinal?
Wait, before you guys get into all of that, conclave in and of itself, it's a process, correct?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, so the conclave,
Yes.
which means in Latin with key, right? Con clave. Clave is key in Spanish with key, right? So just for people who don't understand that.
That's a great definer there.
It's when all the cardinals, and actually, I don't know why you become a cardinal versus like a bishop or an archbishop, to be honest.
Well, because cardinals are over several bishops.
Okay. Oh, okay. I actually didn't realize that. So these cardinals, which are like the top people in the church, other than the Pope himself.
So so a cardinal will be over a region, and then within that region will be several bishops.
Yeah. So they gather in Rome or Vatican City when the Pope dies or after a prescribed period, and they get sequestered. So they are locked in whatever place they're in. Is it always a specific building? I forget.
I forget the name of which building it is. It is in the Vatican.
Yeah.
But I couldn't tell you which building.
You know, judging from the movies that I saw as the non-Catholic here, the buildings look very similar.
Yes, exactly.
So
yes. I agree.
It's just me being objective.
I doubt that it was shot in the Vatican.
Yeah. Oh my God. It was definitely not shot in the Vatican because the Vatican would not have that.
Beautiful.
It was probably an Episcopal church.
But the cardinal thing, it's important to point out, though, from bishop to cardinal, that has to be approved by the Pope, correct?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, all right.
Yeah, cardinals are approved through a papal process.
So there's a process, a hierarchy, and like authority and all of that.
Yeah, and I've never dived in to see if other cardinals actually have a say or not. So there could be some of that as well. I honestly have never dived into the process of how a cardinal is selected, and if there is an advisement, because there's potentially an advisement from the Pope himself to other cardinals to find out and fetter and go through a process. I'm not sure.
Because that is something they bring up in the movie, which we can get to later, but I won't spoil it now. But they were drawing references to that I found super interesting.
Yeah. To tie the bow on what a conclave is, though, is all the cardinals go to Vatican City. They get locked in the building until they choose a new pope. Mm-hmm. And is it a majority vote, or do they have to have an actual
72?
72.
72%.
Which is funny.
72 out of the people who come.
Which is funny. So 70.
Oh, wait, just 72 out of those who come?
Out of the cardinals who are there.
72 of them have to be in agreement. Now that's
way less than a majority.
This goes back to very ancient times.
Oh.
So I could actually highlight this one for you. And they never mentioned this in the movie, but I can tell you why it's significant.
Yeah.
So going back to the ancient Old Testament, you have the Sanhedrin. And the Sanhedrin was the priests that gathered for the Old Covenant. And there had to be 72. And everything had to be in unison as the priests did things. And that goes all the way through the Old Testament, going even into the New Testament. So, in fact, when they created the Septuagint, the Greek Old Testament, oftentimes it's actually the most ancient of the Old Testaments. Depending on which history you read, it was 70 or 72 scholars that they chose out of the Jewish sects to write down everything from Hebrew into Greek, and they all agreed that it was word for word correct. And when they matched all the text up, it was word for word correct, which is how you got the Septuagint. So again, it was 72. And then you go into the new covenant, and it's still the majority. It holds on to that number.
So there you go. There's a historical connection. It didn't just come out of nowhere. But the new pope potential had to have 72. Votes. Yeah.
Interesting. All right, let's talk about these cardinals that are showing up here. So we got Cardinal Thomas Lawrence, and he's like the dean of the College of Cardinals, right?
Yeah, he is the dean.
He's running the conclave.
Played by Ralph Fiennes, and I believe he had a commentary on his name.
Oh yeah, Rafe Fiennes. Yeah, I was going all the time like Ralph Fiennes.
That's I thought it was.
Oh, and his full name. His full name is wild. What is it? Oh crap!
Because I thought for sure it was Ralph Fiennes. That's how I've always pronounced it, was Ralph Fiennes. I didn't know that it was, you said Rafe?
Rafe Fiennes.
Rafe Fiennes. Okay, so that was new to me. I've been mispronouncing it for years.
Oh, here's his full name. Rafe Nathaniel Twizzleton Wykeham Fiennes.
So he's English.
Gosh.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. I love his name. If he were my friend, I'd be like, Twizzle! What up?
That is the most English name I think I've ever heard.
Twizzy.
So what's everybody's favorite movie that Rafe Fiennes has been in? Because he's a very accomplished actor.
I mean, obviously, Harry Potter. Hello.
I have Lord Voldemort. I mean, can't argue with that.
Yeah.
Same for you, Gumby?
I honestly don't know him in too many other movies.
Okay, I have another movie. Has anybody seen The Menu?
No.
Oh my god.
No, but here's I have wanted to see that movie because the trailer for that is off the hook.
Oh my god. It might be my favorite movie of the decade. Now that I'm thinking.
Really?
Like, so it's about it's like a total like very dark satire of like fine dining,
Yes.
basically. Where like Ray Fiennes, he plays this cook, this like world famous chef, and his restaurant is on this exclusive island, and you have to be invited to it. And he's gonna like deliver this like awesome, amazing meal. But the twist is he's invited everybody who's like ever pissed him off in his life, and he's going to kill them like as part of the meal. And so like each little step is like something just weird and like a kind of a parody of something like that's real food, but it like just escalates. Like one of like the third course like has tortillas where there's like embarrassing secrets printed about whoever it's served to.
Oh my gosh.
The fourth one involves the sous chef killing himself.
Oh my lord.
And it only escalates from there.
Twizzy.
So again, the trailer was off the hook, and I've been waiting to watch this because I'm usually up with my kids at night. I don't want to watch it with them.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to pull my wife out of the house for the night, watch it here with her.
This would have to take the cake for me, though, with him, though, because the way he portrayed the cardinal that he was he Secretary of State?
I know he was the dean of the Conclave.
Yeah, and the Pope just wanted him to be. He tried to get out of his role in it, and the Pope knew exactly. No, like you're the guy for it.
Yeah,
but
you're the guy to run this conclave.
Absolutely, he was just like he pulled off the managerial role so amazingly. You saw how he weighed on decisions, how he took everybody into account. He was just
and to set the stage on like what his motivations are or aren't. And it's like number one, he's basically in his job against his will at this point. He feels compelled, forced to do this because his resignation wasn't accepted, and then the Pope said, "I only trust you to do this." He's having kind of like a crisis of faith, which is why he wanted to go basically like be in like a monastery or something like that. I think, right?
Yeah.
Where am I going with this? But like he does like, and it's start to say things like. People find him inspiring nonetheless, even though he's reluctant. So he does, like, people do question, I don't think this is like too much of a spoiler, they do question, like, does he have ambitions to be the Pope, even though he insists he not? And which is actually a pretty common theme of a lot of
and he does get accused of that.
Yeah.
He does get accused of that.
He gets accused of that, and he actually gets emotional trying to tell people about how much he does not want to be Pope.
Yeah.
I seen in the summary you got up there, strong sense of duty and moral integrity. Like the duty, I feel like overrides the moral integrity to some extent because he feels like, okay, I have this responsibility and I have to like unturn every leaf to like find out like if these people should be Pope who might become Pope.
Yeah.
So he's in the middle of all of the political intrigue and people trying to and oftentimes going outside of those conferences.
Spoilers.
I don't think that's a spoiler.
Well, yeah, because they were sequestered, so
yeah,
his hands were already.
I shouldn't say like outside in terms of like outside, but like he is going above and beyond his duty to make sure a good pope is chosen. Let's put it that way.
Yes,
indeed, and man, just the looks on his face when he acts.
Yeah,
the details.
Oh yeah,
the details in his. You could see the wheels spinning all the time, and it was just amazing. It was great acting.
And of course, I thought that really one of the stand-up performances was Stanley Tucci. He was awesome. Like, and he was very Stanley Tucci. Like, if you know who Stanley Tucci is, like he just always is himself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really all you need to bring to it. Like, all you need to do is bring Stanley Tucci for the standout performance. And but he played one of the progressive Cardinals. And he was very much for some of the reforms of the church.
Yeah, so he was basically the flag bearer for the progressive cause. Like he insisted he doesn't really want it, but like he's the one guy who can, supposedly continue the reforms of the current pope, who like isn't described very well. In fact, in the credits he's listed as dead pope. He doesn't have a name. You just see him like, when he's found out to be dead. But he sounds kind of like a Pope Francis in a way, like more of a reformer than a traditionalist.
Right. I would agree.
And so, Bellini's trying to be the continuation of that. But he's also like very like kind of, how do I put this? Like he's very concerned about like the political aspect of it. Like you have to do these things to stop this crazy, traditionalist from becoming pope, that kind of stuff. And it doesn't. Right. It's very practical. Maybe practicality is the word. Yeah, I would put it. Yeah.
He almost sees himself as, I would say, the crossbearer to carry out the wishes of the previous pope and continue with the progress he had made in the world.
Yeah.
So
I personally feel, being the non-Catholic here, that he kind of showed his hands too quickly.
He did that, and he did it unapologetically.
He did, but it came across to the non-Catholic. For me, it was like a bit too emotional.
Yeah.
And he made a comment early on in the movie, so hopefully this isn't a spoiler. But
okay.
Remember when he was playing chess with Cardinals?
Yeah.
And he asked him, "Oh, you guys play chess all the time?" And he's like, "Did you ever win?" He's like, "Oh gosh, no chance. The Pope was always 8 steps ahead of me."
Yeah.
And I found that so fascinating. I'm like, that means something in this movie.
Right.
Like something is set up. So I'm like, that's how I felt when I heard that comment. I'm like, something's already set in motion to his favor. Right. That's how I felt.
Yeah, that whole like showing his cards too quick. I was just thinking, I can't remember her name to save my life, but like it's probably the most famous progressive politician in Northeast Ohio, but she can't get elected to the House of Representatives. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about. Like basically like, so like showing your hands outwardly progressive to the point that like the practicalities of like the centrist kind of person take over, and that the person who's like good at working the system and holding their cards is the one who actually gets elected, even if this person is the other person's the louder voice.
Yeah, I would agree, because if you're so far on one side, the trouble is that you don't get enough votes because you're not crossing enough bridges.
Right.
Yeah. And personally, with the exception of Cardinal Lawrence, I don't believe anyone, and the one name we haven't mentioned yet, which we won't, when they said they didn't want to be pope, I didn't buy it.
Yeah. No, he wanted to be pope.
Oh yeah, he absolutely wanted.
Before we move to the next one, like movies that Stanley Tucci and they guys like. What is it?
I loved him as the father in what was the name? Was it Easy A?
He was the father in Easy A,
wasn't he? Right?
Was he?
I'll pull it up. I'm pretty sure he was.
Oh my God, you're right.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
I loved him in that movie because like he was just so on it. Like he was the hip dad without being a hip dad. Like,
dang, man.
He nailed every line. It's like, that's the father everybody wants. It's like, he was awesome.
I was going to go with Caesar Flickerman from the Hunger Games, but man, I might be changing my vote.
Right? I mean, he was awesome.
I like him in Airport with Tom Hanks.
Yep, there you go.
I love that movie.
Good one.
So much.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I mean, he killed it. He killed it.
I should go back and watch Easy A.
He always delivers. It doesn't matter what he plays.
Yeah,
he really does.
I love Stanley Tucci. Yeah. Which brings us to Cardinal Tremblay, played by John Lithgow. Now, number one, I love John Lithgow.
Oh, yes.
I mean, how can you not love John Lithgow? He's just awesome. But he plays the hardcore traditionalist.
Not the hardest core traditionalist though.
That's true.
Like there's at least two that are more hardcore. Like I feel like he's maybe like a center, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Like he could be a consensus candidate. But there's rumors swirling about him early on.
Yeah.
Which we'll get to. He's charismatic. You can tell he's good at schmoozing. Oh, absolutely. More bourbon. Sorry, please. I do regret that. I wish he had, like, I don't know what you would do with him, but I feel like I wanted John Lithgow to have more screen time because it's John Lithgow.
Yeah.
John Lithgow should always have more screen time. He is perhaps one of the best character actors of our lifetime.
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely.
I think his first introduction into the movie at the death, in the room, he came across as being definitely controlling. Like I wanna know what people know.
Yep.
He wanted to stop their conversation, just to make things official. Like he came across to me as controlling, and we didn't really know what he was trying to control yet, which we'll get to eventually. But
once we announce spoilers,
yeah. But that was the first thing I noticed about him. All right, this dude knows something.
Yes. Yes.
All right, favorite John Lithgow thing.
Harry and the Hendersons.
Oh, dang, that is a good choice. I thought I first saw him because I'm a little younger. Like I thought I first saw him in Third Rock from the Sun, but it actually was Harry and the Hendersons. I watched that movie a ton when I was like 5.
Dude, that's such a good movie. Like on so many levels, it's such a good.
Oh, dang.
It's a classic '80s. It's got like every piece of it that you want from like a classic '80s.
For sure.
You know.
It's up there with the Goonies.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's iconic level.
Yeah.
You know what's okay? So this is like totally wrong, but like consider I was like 4 or 5 at the time. But like I feel like I conflated him in my head because I just watched these two things over and over. Like I assumed he was the same guy who was the dad on Alf.
Oh
no.
Absolutely not. But I was like 4.
I loved Alf. So.
Alf was great.
They both have kind of like those like
Willie.
Yeah. They very very I don't want to say not flamboyant, but like that kind of voice that's like
I know
excited. You know what I mean?
I could see the connection as a 4-year-old.
I mean, it's totally different otherwise. Yeah, I know. And Alf. Now that I've gone back and watched clips of Alf, I mean that's like really bad television.
It's awful.
And then you read stories about Alf, and everybody hated each other in Alf.
And
like that guy, whoever his name is, he hated doing Alf. Absolutely hated
sure
it.
He did.
It's a job.
It's interesting because it was a very.
I can't believe we're talking about Alf.
What you know more about Alf?
We've
strayed. A divisive show, but so funny because it was.
But back to John Lithgow. I mean, even though Harry and the Hendersons is wonderful, it's a little fuzzy in my memory because it's been so long to watch it. But like him in Third Rock from the Sun is just seared in my brain.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I'd have to agree with that. Say the same for me.
Maybe one of the best performances in TV sitcom history.
Yeah. I do love it. It was phenomenal. But I'm still going to put my favorite as Harry and the Hendersons.
Totally respectable.
It's the nostalgia.
Of course it is. But that brings us to Cardinal Vincent Tedesco, played by Sergio, and I hope I pronounced this right, Castellito.
Yeah.
And he's been mostly an Italian theater actor, I believe.
Yeah, I didn't recognize him as an actor, to be honest.
No.
Yeah. And it's actually an interesting point about this movie is they seem to have cast a very wide global net on the actors. Like, of course, they went for some big names.
You're right.
But they went all over the place looking for basically everybody else, including other big names in the movie when you think about who the characters are.
Yeah. And whether you like his character or not, he played he played the heck out of that character. I mean, there's so much emotional conveyance inside of his performance.
Yeah.
Very well done. Whether you don't agree with him or not, his performance was phenomenal, full of good nuance and emotion.
So he is a hardline conservative. Like he is to take the church. Actually his biggest bugaboo is the Latin Mass, bringing back the Latin Mass. So he's in a lot of like their doctrinal battles, they're painting with a very broad brush that doesn't address the nuance in the actual positions of the different clusters of cardinals or bishops or of all church leaders in the actual like real life. And I don't think they is a reason. This is not trying to be a story right now. It's trying to be a story that could be at any given time to some extent. But yeah, like he's very into the Latin Mass, so he kind of represents that action that would be for that. He's also quite racist.
Yeah.
He played
Spoilers.
That's like in the first 10 minutes.
It's in the first 10 minutes, but still.
And he played the part very well.
Yeah.
I won't say much more about
He
that.
played a great race.
Yeah, we can't go too much further without spoilers.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
But he played the heck out of that character. I mean, it was because if you look at the way he punctuates his sentences, just shows the level of his acting, because he punctuates them with such beautiful nuance and character. Like he did a brilliant job at that.
He is. So there's a lot of like not speaking in English in throughout the movie, and he is like his scenes where he's not speaking English, like this is the best execution of like hearing somebody rant in a foreign language and seeing the subtitles.
Yeah.
Which is cool. I liked it.
Yeah, you could...
early on when Cardinal Lawrence first met Tucci, I can't remember his name. I don't remember his name in the movie, but anyways, when he first met with Cardinal Tucci, the movie showed its hand very quickly that the only reason why he was seriously going to consider quote unquote being Pope was to stop Tedesco.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
From being the Pope. He's like, if that's the only alternative, then of course I'm going to, And I'm like, wow, okay, all right. That's, the schism is that wide.
Yep.
In the real world, they're definitely, it's not a schism, but in the real world, there's definitely two sides. Actually, I would say there's four sides to the church, but there is in the Roman Catholic part of the church, there is definitely two sides to almost three, because there's a lot of us who are very centrist, and there's a very hardcore right, and there's a very hardcore left. And I would say the majority, probably over 60%, are very centrist. I'm among the centrists. I'm not right or left. I'm very centrist.
Oh, I just realized would have been awesome for us to figure out, and it would take me a while to figure out, but figure out which real life, like, church, leader is most like this person. Oh, I was just thinking of him. I'm trying to remember Vigano. I feel like this, like, if Vigano is like so crazy. Vigano was never a cardinal, right? Was he a cardinal?
No, he was bishop.
Okay, he was only a bishop, but like, if Vigano, the guy who wrote like the letter accusing Pope Francis, all this stuff, and now he's basically like nobody knows where he is, but he writes like love letters to like the hard right bishops in America
on Twitter /
Yeah, he's basically like the conspiracy theory
you can't
bishop.
find him.
But yeah, Tedesco is like a more politically savvy Vigano.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll get more into that, because I mean, there were some things I'm like, all right, they're showing their hands pretty quickly here, and not covering. I'm talking about the direction of the movie at that point.
Yeah, honestly though, like that is his whole story. Like he is kind of a one-note character.
He really is.
He plays that note the whole way through, and he's supposed to do that.
He is.
When I first saw his role, I'm thinking, oh, you know where the mafia went. Okay, like that's how they portrayed him.
I mean, we'll leave that for the spoiler section. All right. And then we have Cardinal Vincent Benitez, played by Carlos Diaz, as Keith said his name is pronounced.
We had to find like somebody doing another YouTube video interviewing him.
Yeah. Keith had to research this beforehand.
So he's the mysterious, and that's all I'll say about him, because this is in the first 10 minutes as well. He is the mysterious cardinal who shows up. And what was that process where he was incardinaled or whatever? What's that called again?
I forget the name of it.
Oh, dang it.
But he was created as a cardinal specifically to be over a very war-torn area of the world.
In Pectorum.
Archbishop of Kabul. In Pectorum. So he was
Kabul.
Yeah, made an archbishop in secret so he could be the archbishop of Kabul. Yeah. He had like a history before that in like various missions all over the world.
Right.
And yeah, so he shows up. Nobody knows he's going to show up, and the only like proof that they have that he should be there is basically that letter from the Pope that made him a cardinal in pectorum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was one other person there who knew about him.
Mm-hmm.
So. Yeah.
Oh, there was like ahead of time.
No, there's one that refers to knowing about him.
Oh, interesting. I did not pick up on that.
Well, yeah, and I think the process of impectorum doesn't just mean the Pope knows, because there is a process, and in practical terms, other people would have to know to make him that. So the way the movie portrayed it as if nobody would know.
Yeah, it was subtle. It was
a stretch to me.
It was subtle. But if you go back and watch the movie again, he says, "I really do believe he is supposed to be here."
There's no way, if you think about this, there's no way that other people didn't know. If we're just going by the movie, and the way they portrayed it, because where did his support for votes even come from?
Right, exactly.
Well, I think it's because he's a tabula rasa. Like basically nobody knows anything about it.
Yeah,
and like other than like. When he speaks to them.
Well,
they only knew him by his prayer.
Right.
Or they knew other things about him.
Yeah. That's true. But again, if you go back and you look at the introduction when he's supposed to be there, he says, no. I do believe he is a cardinal, and I do believe he is supposed to be here. Like he actually says that.
Yeah.
Twice.
The guy who was advising.
Oh, okay. So
you're talking about what's his face?
Forget his name.
Lawrence.
Yes.
Yeah.
But so obviously,
the guy who was advising Lawrence.
Yeah, advising him. Yes.
Oh. So, okay. Oh yeah. Okay.
So obviously he knew about.
He knew things.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, I was still surprised that he garnered, even in the first round of the conclave, as many votes as he did.
Yeah.
When other cardinals who were well known got nothing.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So that to me was another showing of the hand.
I think because he's very personable, like he's soft spoken, he's personable.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Because they're all like, yeah, of course, he did a nice prayer at the meal at the very beginning, but like there's also the subtext that everybody's talking about these things. So I feel like I kind of envision him going around and talking to people and being his totally chill, normal, like not pretentious self.
Right.
And that's probably endearing to at the beginning, at least a small subset who are like sick of all the BS.
Yeah. But we would have to assume that happened.
Right, yes. Exactly. Yeah. So we should mention the actor real quick. Carlos Diaz. This is really interesting. He's a Mexican actor, but he only started acting in 2020 after the pandemic. He was an architect for 30 years.
Incredible.
And he retired and decided to go into acting, and he has only like 2 credits on IMDb prior to this movie, and he got picked up in their global casting search. And I think he did a good job. I don't think he was like, his part isn't actually, there's not a lot expected of him in his part. So he really just has to be like this like calm guy, this serene kind of almost angelic figure in a way. So like there's not a lot he has to do, but I think he does a good job with it.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I thought that he had, again, kind of like other characters, he was able to nuance some performance in there that conveyed something of a deeper thought. It was reflective.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. When everybody thought he was done praying and he kept going, then he saw the African cardinal stand back up like, oh,
right.
This guy's going to go to church.
I will say the character himself, even though I just said like, oh, there's a subtext that he's probably like talking to people and that's how he's getting support. I do feel like the character is slightly hand wavy the way it's written, because it is kind of like, where does he get? Yeah. Like why do people pay attention to him? And it is a little bit of mystery because everybody else is so absorbed in the politics that you think they would just gravitate towards each other.
And did you notice in the during the votes, the conclave, I mean, they isolated every potential, all the cardinals who may potentially be the pope, except for Benitez.
Oh, interesting.
He never got isolated in a conclave.
I hadn't thought about that.
Huh.
And because I think that would have like totally gave it away. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you mean there's a potential for this really nobody to become the pope?
Yeah. Well, of course, that's interesting about conclaves is everybody there, anybody there can become Pope.
Anybody.
Yeah, actually, that's a question I meant to look up. Can the Conclave vote for somebody who's not in the Conclave?
So the answer is yes. So I
thought so.
I did look this up, and they can nominate anybody.
That's right. You don't have to be a priest to be Pope, technically.
No, they could literally nominate you, Keith.
But
they
the reality,
hold my breath.
the reality of that even going anywhere.
It's not even fathomable.
Yeah.
That's why I thought even Benitez.
Yeah, really, the only requirement is that you're Catholic. That's really it.
Yeah.
So
his prayer was fantastic, though.
I loved it.
I love the depth of spirituality that he brought to the movie.
Yeah,
that juxtaposed the ambition of every other cardinal.
Yeah,
and for me, if that wasn't in it, it would have been a really hard watch.
Yeah,
right, I mean, I'm just watching the Senate.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
yeah.
I'm just watching
West
our
Wing.
politicians.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's where, because they I understand why they have to draw a stark contrast between, the one real Catholic in the room, what they're kind of trying to portray him as, versus, all of the, politically ambitious people jockeying for position. I get why they have to make that line stark, but I think that might be a slight demerit on the movie, is it does make that line a little bit too stark. So there is sort of a comicalness to it, that there's many more shades of gray in that distinction, if in a real grouping of all the Cardinals together.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't think this is a spoiler to say, but I mean, because it happened right at the beginning when he was introduced, he highlighted immediately the distinction between the women who serve and are there to only serve.
Oh, yes.
them.
Yeah.
And everyone, oh, well, I guess the women, right? And he immediately, pointed that out. Like this, oh, yes, it's from God. It's bountiful from God, but the women are doing the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just thought, man, that is great. So I did love that about it.
That's true. Yeah. He did a brilliant job. And then one thing, so I apologize, I had ChatGPT write this up, and it neglected to bring up the cardinal from...
Oh,
yeah.
Adeyemi.
Yeah.
I was like, who are we missing?
Yes. Yeah. And he was a very pivotal character in the movie, played by Lucian Missamati, who is actually a British actor. He's also a writer.
So he's also a hardline conservative.
Yes.
Very, very much not a reflection, less than a character, I'd say, of the typical African bishop. So they're typically, most of them are socially conservative. There's a few exceptions. So he's going to represent maybe the very conservative strain, but not the Latin Mass strain.
Right.
Yeah, he's not fanatical.
I would say mainstream conservative.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a little more hard leaning on that side, but still.
Are we getting into the backstory of that or no? Not yet.
Not
okay,
yet.
All right.
One more actor, and that is Isabella Rossellini.
Who is Sister Agnes.
Yes. And initially, I will say I wasn't sure where she was going to go. And again, no spoilers yet. But I did enjoy her character as she developed.
Mm-hmm.
She's a very strong actress, and I admit, the only way I know her is from Merlin. So, which was with what's his name? From Jurassic Park.
Man, this is bothering me.
Oh yeah, shoot, what's his name from Jurassic Park?
You mean the main character?
Yeah.
The guy who plays Grant?
Yeah. Yes. I always forget. Hold on. Here we go. Jurassic Park.
Goldblum? Jeff Goldblum?
Sam Neill.
Oh.
So he played in a movie with Isabella Rossellini called Merlin. And that was where I knew her from. Was from Merlin. So it was pretty well done. I wouldn't say it was top level studio quality. It was more like a well done FX, right? So,
yeah.
Like better than Sci-Fi Channel, right? So it was well done, but not like huge, awesome studio quality. But that's where I knew her from. But her character, I thought, developed beautifully. I was a little concerned at first, but she was maybe even more nuanced in her performance than some of the males, because she comes across first as being very stiff, and then slowly gives way. You start to realize that she's actually trying to protect the church, maybe even more than some of the Cardinals.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Like, it kind of, in a way, it's a little bit stereotypical, because there is a sense of like the sisters and the nuns, they have more power than is perceived because they're in all these places, and she kind of demonstrates that.
Yes.
So I almost feel like, I mean, she does the part very well.
She does.
I do think it's like a part that's like, the part is important for showing that mechanism more than it is for like an individual performance, I think.
Right. Yeah. So, and now, dear listeners, is where we inform you that if you have not watched the movie yet, go watch it, because we are going to be diving into spoilers.
Spoiler
From
time!
here on out.
Maybe we should break our beer open.
Hold on.
Yeah, that's a good way
second.
to separate it.
From now on, rest of the episode, spoiler time.
If we are drinking beer, there is spoiling to be
That's
done.
right. So let's finish our bourbons. Oh, gently.
Chug it.
I'm not chugging this. I'm going to sip it very swiftly.
I had one sip left, so I chugged my one sip.
Again,
Oh, that one tickled my tongue real good.
I'm happy with this.
That's great, isn't it?
It's so smooth.
That finished well.
You don't need it just for Christmas.
No.
You need it every night.
They did a really nice job with this.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't burn as badly as some of the, I mean, again, enjoyable bourbons, but it's more smooth, like almost like an Irish whiskey.
Okay.
But it still has the flavor of a bourbon.
Yep.
So it's walking that nice line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like I think less about the smoothness than I think of how enjoyable the burn is. It's a smooth burn.
Yeah. For those interested, look up their and how they make their whiskeys and bourbons over there, because they have a completely different process than traditional.
Oh, that's right. Because they're able to do it much faster. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Oh, like at least 2/3 faster.
Yep.
When I was going for my MBA, like my last professor of my last class, he was like an investor in Cleveland whiskey. He was like,
really,
like, I was like a pretty popular thing for like established Cleveland industry titans, was to get into whiskey.
Yeah.
Nice.
I want a piece of this action.
And then I actually don't think I pulled up. Oh, I couldn't pull up the stats on this. This is a place I go eat sometimes because I am from both Czech and German descent, and I will occasionally go over to Schnitzel, the Schnitzel House, because they have insanely good German food, and they also now have a brewery. This is their Busendorf Hazy.
That's a wonderful name.
I sampled this the other day, and I had to pick a 6 up for us because it was delightfully good.
Bless your soul, Aaron. Oh, that smells good.
Oh, I can actually smell a little bit. Holy crap.
Yeah,
that's poking through.
This one you're going to smell. This one you're going to smell. But the cool part, look at all the head. This one, it heads up very nicely.
That's beautiful.
It's got a nice top to it. See that? And, smell the citrus on the top of that. Like, you can smell a little bit of lemon, a little bit of maybe grapefruit, maybe a little lime. Oh,
okay, that's really good.
It has a beautiful nose to it.
All I smell is manna from heaven.
I'm not really into the IPAs that are too bitter, like very bitter anymore. But I love the ones that like, they're still an IPA, but they emphasize the fruit. And this is right there.
Yeah, it's not too hoppy.
This one is so well balanced. And again, this is why I had to bring it in. Because I knew that whether you love IPAs or not, we would still love this.
This is a great IPA crossover.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Again, this is from the Schnitzel House in Parma. Okay. It is at 10.5.
Wait, what?
ABV.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And you can't taste it.
You German.
No, you can't at all.
You Germans.
Holy crap.
Us Germans, we start.
We're gonna be toasted for the next show.
We start at 8 and move up. So
this is for breakfast.
Yeah, this actually Germans are actually known for drinking a beer at breakfast.
That one for sure. I could.
Oh, that's your orange juice, son. Yeah. It's got this beautiful, well balanced flavor to it. You know, this is the way you do an IPA if you want an IPA for breakfast.
Not that we advocate that, but if you were,
we don't advocate that. But if you were, like Gumby said. So
what's our first twist here?
Spoilers. In case you missed the last time.
All right. So I'm going to bring up the whole racist thing.
Is there a distinction between twists and spoilers?
I wouldn't bring up first key points on the characters.
Okay.
So first, let's bring up. What was his name?
Tedesco.
Yes. So Tedesco is an unapologetic racist. like literally, he's an unapologetic racist.
And the writing's on the wall at the beginning. Like the first time, like maybe the second time you talk, like you see him speak. Like he says something racist, and then what's his name? Lawrence is like, I gotta go talk to some other people.
And then he grabs his sleeve and reiterates it and looks right at the African American cardinal.
Yeah.
In points.
His final speech. So maybe this is the point to mention, like throughout this movie, there's like vague threats and then actual like terrorism happening around like Vatican City and Rome. And there's like an actual like incident that actually like kind of blasts out the side of the wall, or like at least a small part of the side of the wall. And
it leads up to that though, because 2 days before that, there is that quote unquote incident outside, right?
Oh,
and the incident outside before that incident, nobody gets hurt, but there's injuries because somebody had ignited himself, and he blew up. And they don't show any of this in the movie. None of this is shown, but then he reiterates what happened, and somebody blew himself up in protest. They never do say what the protest is for.
Right.
But he protests, and he blows himself up. Some people are injured, that nobody else dies. So there's something going on outside. They seem to indicate that it doesn't have anything to do with the Vatican and what they're doing, but something going on in Italy. So...
Yeah, and that's like, it kind of goes back to like how they're painting broad brushes with these political factions on the inside. They're painting with a very broad brush about this terrorist activity, and like it's meant to, heighten tension, and towards the end to actually accelerate us to a resolution.
Yeah.
But I think it is a slight weakness of the movie that it's just so vague that there's not really any teeth to sink into, like how would this reflect in the real world? Like what would be the equivalent thing? Because you're trying to take this insider view of the conclave, this fictionalized insider view, and like relate it to like what could happen really in the church. Like that's where everybody's mind goes.
I mean, a lot of movies do that now. Maverick, Top Gun. Well, we got to make sure we take the bad guys out.
Oh, yeah.
Who are the bad guys? Well, the bad ones, right? Yeah, the bad ones. The really, really, really bad ones. But who are they?
That's who we say it is.
They have military. They're the bad ones.
It's a very common device in a lot of movies where they have like 18 other priorities. Like Top Gun Maverick, it's like, we got to show planes going fast.
Yes.
And that's like priorities 1 through 17, and 18 is like, there's crap going on. That's a reason why we have to run, go in planes that are fast.
And blow planes up at Mach 10 without dying, by the way. We ejected at Mach 10 and we're not going to die.
Oh, man. I remember like thinking, I guess it doesn't matter if we spoil Top Gun Maverick, because how old is that movie? But like getting to the end, like, where they like leave the plane, like where they're like about to get ejected, and then thinking like, okay, this is gotta be like the last few minutes of the movie, and then they have the whole like thing where they're like, going covert on the other enemy side to like get out of there.
Yeah.
That was just like, it was just like, we're taking Top Gun and we're turning it not to 11, not to 12, but like 13 to 15.
Yeah. We're not gonna do, shirtless feet.
It's hella fun though. I gotta say, that whole movie was hella fun.
It was a good movie.
It's because it's nostalgia.
Yeah.
So
anyway,
I think Tedesco played his role that was given to him very well. I think he definitely pulled off the racist, extremist. I guess what I don't appreciate is how that conflates conservatism with only being racist.
So what I did like, though, is that you kind of had the different parts of the church, right? And he was like the ultra conservative. And I won't lie. We do have a few of those in the church. Mm-hmm. We do have a few of those.
Yes, but to conflate that with just, being conservative or quote unquote to the right.
Right.
Is like, Keith was saying, it's a really broad brush. I get why you wanted to do that for the movie.
Yeah.
For the sense of dynamics within the movie.
Yeah. Like there's real world overlaps, but the overlaps don't necessarily encapsulate the average like Latin mass bishop or something.
I agree. So I agree with that. I think what they're trying to echo is like he would be among the he actually wouldn't even be in the Vatican, honestly. He would be the ultra pious.
Yeah, he's Vigano. Vigano doesn't get to the Vatican.
Exactly.
He hides out in some island somewhere and posts on X.
Because there was that big story that came out about the FBI watching, Catholics. They weren't watching Latin Catholics. They were watching the ultra conservative that were, throwing rosaries around their AK-47s, right? So that's the kind of people that they're trying to depict in this movie. But that person actually wouldn't be in the Vatican.
Well, let me ask you guys this, though. Did Tedesco say anything that you guys actually said, oh, there's actually some truth to that?
I mean, like real truth or like accurately portraying somebody in the church?
Whether in the movie or not. Because there's one thing he said to me that I thought, you know what, that's actually a reality still.
Okay, what was that?
And the reality is that we always divide ourselves.
Oh, that we do.
Whether by language or by ethnicity, he pointed that out as just a matter of what it essentially means to be human. So as much as we try to always push for, whatever that shouldn't look like, we have all Spanish churches. We have all black churches.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
We have all Slavic speaking churches. We have all, whatever.
Yeah.
Tribalism.
I think he was definitely reflecting a reality in that statement. I also think he was exposing one of his priors, which is that this is natural, that we should be divided in this way.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So I think he was just stating that even amongst us Cardinals, it's going to happen.
Yeah. And that might actually be one of the most accurate portrayals of like the hard right Latin mass person is like, not that they're going to like go off the rails on like some uber overtly racist stuff, but they're going to like, I mean, ultimately this is kind of uber racist, but they're going to pursue this argumentation that it's just better if we're separated. That's all we're trying to say. We're just trying to like keep the peace by each group having their own space.
Yeah.
That's like the polite uber racist argument.
Which is the antithesis of what the church is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I would agree. But nevertheless, it still happens.
Yeah. It does. It does. Yeah.
Now, I think the terrorism events actually, like, maybe they are intended, and I don't know if they do this 100%, well, but like to be something that's so dramatic, so it builds so much tension, it creates so much anxiety in those in the room that it exposes like really overtly Tedesco's racism, because he goes on this like super racist rant, like basically like, just short of kill all Muslims, basically is what he says.
And that's more or less what he does say.
Yeah.
Halfway through maybe 2/3 of the movie, he more or less is like, we need to be militant against that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
So he could be like the directors, authors, scriptwriters could be suggesting that in this really tense situation, we would see a lot more overt racism from people who vaguely fit the archetype of Tedesco.
Yeah,
he did do that.
Yeah,
and I didn't like that they portrayed him as like a Trumpish personality within the Cardinals.
Right.
Because I felt that was a bit too, for me being the non-Catholic, a bit too extreme.
Well, and obviously, Hollywood being Hollywood, they have to accentuate the characters way more than what they would be, right? So if I am minutely racist in a movie, I'm going to be overtly racist, right? And so that's just the way that's going to portray itself all throughout the movie. If I am overtly liberal, I'm sorry, if I'm conservatively liberal in the movie, I'm going to be overtly liberal. Yeah. So that's just the way the movies go. It's they have to over accentuate every possibility.
Yeah.
That's Hollywood being Hollywood, because you have an hour and a half to convey your message.
Yeah. So to kind of get into like the broad, because we got to get to like the really big spoiler here soon.
Let's go. Move on.
Like what's happening in the movie is that one by one, all of these politically ambitious people are being taken down.
Yeah.
So you have
well, don't leave the racism thing first.
Right. Like, well, you have Adeyemi who's being taken down because there's he had an inappropriate relationship 30 years ago, and someone pulled the strings to
Miss Amadi, Lucy Miss Amadi. I forget his name in the movie, but the actor, yes, so who plays the African cardinal?
Yeah, Adeyemi.
Yes, Adeyemi. Yep.
Yeah. So Cardinal Adeyemi is he's like the front runner at one point, and he's taken out because very timely someone pulls the strings to expose that he had fathered a child with a nun. Or maybe I don't know if she was a nun at the time, but she was very young.
It was John Lithgow who did it.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yes, you're right.
John Lithgow
now gets us into how John Lithgow was taken down, or Cardinal Tremblay, because he's the one who is basically buying off other cardinals to vote for him,
which was awesome.
Yeah.
To see that came out, and how. Gumby, to your point, remember when you said that the previous pope, was always 8 steps ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So, and how he had the document hidden away in the bed.
Yeah. So Lawrence actually breaks a bunch of rules. Like he breaks the seal on the Pope's room and takes the document that exposes Tremblay's misdeeds. And Tremblay was actually dismissed by the Pope as his last meeting, but Tremblay denies it because there's no record of this, because the Pope died right after that.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing. And the point that actually brings him down is actually the strongest part. It's like it's the climax of Sister Agnes's arc.
Yeah. So
where they're in the public rooms and they've distributed the the documents that expose that Tremblay's been buying people off. And so the first reaction of the Cardinals is to Lawrence is that you are like selling out your fellow Cardinals.
But this is where Lawrence shows his beautiful character. Like he would rather be demonized by all the Cardinals for showing truth. And that I was like, oh my Lord, this is where Rafe Fiennes did just a brilliant job portraying the character. And he's like, he would rather be the demon of the whole conclave showing truth.
But just that right there does not save his bacon.
It doesn't.
What actually saves his bacon is when Sister Agnes exposes that not, okay, so nobody cares that Tremblay bought a bunch of you off because you're all complicit, and you are, demonizing Lawrence as someone who sells out his fellow Cardinals. Tremblay has sold out a fellow Cardinal because he's the one who who had the nun who Adeyemi fathered a child with, come to Rome to expose his indiscretion. So Tremblay is someone who sold out a cardinal as well. Yes. And then everybody else in the room turns on Tremblay.
Yeah.
Because it's not really about like what's right or what's wrong. It's about like who is betraying who at that point.
And before he was exposed in the room of all the Cardinals, he was approached by Lawrence. Confronted. It was just him and Lithgow. I can't remember his Tremblay.
Yeah.
And even when exposed, and he brought it up, he still tried to project it onto him. Like, is it seems like you're the one with ambition, Lawrence, that wants to be the Pope. Are you sure it's
Yes.
not you doing that?
Yeah.
And I thought it was so poignant because he still made him doubt himself. And even when he walked away, he was still doubting himself. Like, maybe I am the one.
Yes.
I was like, oh my gosh, what amazing acting.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, too, is that the nun never told him anything.
No.
She did what she did on the computer, and she walked out of the room.
Which I thought was a brilliant move.
Oh
I loved when she
I'm
did
just going
that.
to leave these windows open.
I loved when she did that because in her station, she can't do certain things. But if she leaves a window open.
But she
got to log out.
She understood authority, though.
Yep.
She respected and understood authority because they were sequestered.
Yep.
And that was amazing to me. I'm like, my Lord, even confronted.
Brilliant.
I'm like,
Yeah.
that
I
was
think a cool example is like Sister Agnes as the archetype of the concept that the women religious actually can pull a lot of strings. Not they aren't they aren't provided the actual leadership positions. They can't lead by authority, but they actually have control over all this information that can make or break. They are kingmakers, essentially.
Absolutely.
My sister used to always say, she's like, I'm not the head of the household, but I'm the neck.
It's funny because echoing back to one of our previous episodes, I don't remember way back when, it was one of the ones George was on, where we do bring up there are many females in the Catholic Church that outrank priests, bishops, all over the place. Yeah. It's just that people don't realize it because they often don't have the spotlight. They don't want the spotlight because why would you? I mean, very few people actually want the spotlight. If you want the spotlight, you're probably the wrong one in charge.
So speaking of female empowerment, so these other aspirants to the papacy get struck down one by one. And then there's this terrorist event. And at that point, it's probably going to be between Tedesco and Lawrence. Lawrence is garnering support gradually as he's, more center, right, left, whatever. The normies get taken out. But at the same time, against all odds, Cardinal Benitez is slowly growing support as well.
Yes.
And so they're all in this room talking after this terrorist event, trying to process what happened. It happened in the middle of the vote, and Tedesco does his super racist rant, and then Benitez gets up and gives this very eloquent speech, talking about being in war-torn countries and how it's really the people that suffer, and that you don't know anything. You're declaring war, but you don't know anything about war, Tedesco.
But he says it in the most beautifully humble way. And that's the thing that he conveys. Because to your point, he does belittle him, but he does it in such humility.
Oh, yeah.
It's such humility.
Yeah, you're right. He did it in such a way that Tedesco's really, oh, yeah, you're right.
It's a very good speech, which then, it very quickly, the next scene, Benitez is voted Pope. And I do think this was a little bit of like the movie was like, oh crap, we got to wrap this up.
Yeah, it went too quick at this
Wait, before we go to that part, though, I mean, we missed one poignant scene.
Okay,
I mean,
go ahead.
And to wrap up the whole racism thing, when Lawrence met with Adidama in the room, when he was caught, right, about his past sin, and he had to confront the issue. That was before Lawrence gave his homily.
Oh,
which was such an important part of the movie.
That's right.
His homily.
Wait, did he give multiple homilies or just one?
Just the one.
No, that was he met with Adidama after the homily. The homily was like one of the first things in the movie.
The first homily. No, because Adidama told him, he's like, oh yes, your homily. The trick to that, I hear, is to never offend anybody.
Oh, okay. With that part, yes. I remember that part, yes. Yeah.
And I thought, oh my God.
That is good foreshadowing to Benitez getting elected.
Yeah.
And to not offending anybody because he realizes the political dynamics that are going on.
Yeah.
And he asked him to pray with him. And I'm like, man, wow, what an amazing part. Because we got to talk about his homily.
Yeah.
That was like the setup for the whole thing. It bridged the beginning of the movie and the dynamics in the end.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's
but it's kind of talking about like a servant leader, not being too certain about your about you being the heir to the throne or whatever.
Well, the thing is that to Gumpy's point, I love the fact that he does the prescriptive part and he stops and he's like, yeah, and you know all the rest. Let me just speak from the heart, and he does the rest, and the rest is beautiful. And he's actually called out by his friend Stanley Tucci afterwards because it was so beautifully punctuated to the point. It was fantastic because he's talking about how they need the Pope to be human. They need the Pope to be somebody who acknowledges that he is human. He has sinned, that he is somebody who has to bring that forward so that he can convey the point that we are all human, and that's how we get to where we need to go.
Yeah, this is, for me, laid the groundwork for the final unveiling, so to speak. We haven't gotten there yet, and I won't say it. But without that homily, there could be no acceptance of the ending in the movie.
Right.
That's a
At
good
least
point.
for me,
I see that. I see that for sure.
Catholic.
But we should get to the ending because this is what will reverberate.
Wait.
In this movie past due date.
But you're doing what the movie did. You're racing. Hold on. Let me finish.
This is where I have to digress from a theological point of view. From it was beautifully spoken. It was emotional. It pulled at the heartstrings.
Yeah.
But to make certainty a sin, for me, was a stretch way too far.
Okay.
Because he pointed. I think he tried to equate Christ as being very uncertain. But and our faith is so certain in Christ. So I just don't view certainty as a sin.
I agree.
In terms of our faith.
Yeah, I agree.
So that would be the only thing I point out about that.
Yeah.
I don't view it as a sin, but I view it as a crutch.
Now, Keith, to your point.
Okay,
go.
But no, I want to finish it with that. I don't know if you want to go with that. But I think that a lot of folks rely on certainty, and then when anything happens that actually contradicts that supposed certainty, the house of cards comes flying down. So I think it actually is a really pertinent point. And now it gets us to where certainty does not apply. So Cardinal Benitez gets elected Pope. There had been, Lawrence had been, going around trying to get more information about him. He had heard something about the Pope flying him to, I forget, was it Switzerland or Vienna or something like that?
I believe it was Switzerland.
Okay, yeah, Switzerland to get a medical procedure, but then the flight was canceled. Then Lawrence gets another tip after Benitez has been elected Pope, and he goes and talks to Benitez and asks him, what was this procedure that you were going to get? And it was a laparoscopic hysterectomy.
Yep.
AK,
that's it.
Removing Cardinal Benitez's uterus.
Yes. Which he didn't know he had because he had gone to the hospital for an appendectomy.
Yes.
And so he actually didn't know he had a uterus. So which shows that he actually had both organs.
So Cardinal Benitez is intersex.
Right.
So and this creates this of course controversy. Like, did we just elect a woman as Pope? They're trying to figure out. Now Lawrence, in his embracing of uncertainty and what he's perceiving as God's will, I think, and kind of leaning into I'm going to trust what the Pope was doing here because the Pope was the one who kind of ensured that Benitez was there in the first place. He lets it go through. Cardinal Benitez explains that he basically grew up. He found out he had other organs, but he basically grew up as he did. He decided not to have the procedure because it was this is who I am. I am someone who I present male. I apparently have female organs. This is how God made me.
Right.
Yeah.
And that really does. That's real. That's real.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's just, I love what Benitez says because they don't rush the point. He says, I am whatever God made me.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, that does exist. So how do you argue with that? That literally is. You are what God made you.
I have a comment to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
But I'll get to that in a second. I think it's interesting that the Pope was actually going to pay for that surgery. Why? Let me ask the Catholics in the room. Why would the Pope want to pay for that?
But it sounds. I could be wrong because
I mean, I know it's speculation at this point because it's. But
I didn't make it through the movie twice. I made it through the movie 1.5 times. I didn't get to the second half the second time.
If Benitez knew that, surely the Pope would have to have known that's the way God made you, right?
I think that he says, and I could be wrong. I think he says that he actually insinuated that it wasn't necessary, and he knew that who he was, and he insinuated that it wasn't necessary.
Well, since we're all insinuating and speculating, could there be another reason why the Pope would want to pay for that surgery?
Sure. If you think it's necessary for you. But if you don't, that's okay.
I mean, I think because there was this whole, he had an appendectomy. He found out this startling revelation about himself. He talked to the Pope about it because wasn't he ready to resign?
Right. He was.
So I think this maybe was presented as a solution to maybe play more within the rules of the church, even though it's still this incredibly gray area.
Right.
But I think most importantly, this is where the movie is projecting a theoretical. This is it kind of gets into. This is even subtly sending a message.
Mm-hmm.
It's informing culture about there is this theoretical possibility. I feel because I've thought about this possibility a lot. I feel like I've raised this actually on the show at some point that in theory, a woman could have been ordained. The church has had this longstanding prohibition on ordination of women, but in theory, a woman could have been ordained and nobody would have known. Because how do you tell what is a woman? I know Ben Shapiro and what's his face? What's that dude who does the stupid blog? What's his name?
Matt Walsh.
Matt Walsh. I know Matt Walsh thinks it's super duper obvious in all 100% cases. But there could have been many priests, bishops, whatever, who were intersex or even possibly transgender. Maybe they were completely physiologically the other sex, but they present think of all the women who enlisted for the Civil War and got through all that pretending to be a man.
I mean, that did happen.
Yeah. So it's raising this possibility for basically it's saying, if it is trying to say a message, it's trying to say for all your rigidity about gender roles and which genders or sexes can be in what roles in the church, you have no 100% certainty there. And it is speaking to the idea that gender is to some extent a social construct because it isn't always just male or female. There are in-betweens, and the church in its doctrine has not and really cannot account for all contingencies.
Objectively, as the non-Catholic in the room, the church has historically known about that and dealt with it.
Oh.
I've done a little bit of research on it, and the church, even back to, let's see.
I was going to say, Guppy has spoken on this.
Going back to the medieval canon law, the church has known how to treat with compassion. Is known. What's the word? Heifer. I can't say the word.
The old term was hermaphrodite.
Hermaphrodite. Yeah. They dealt with it in the past. The Catholic Church.
How did they deal with it?
And they dealt with it by these people are to be treated with compassion, with full sacraments, being baptized, with communion, with confession, with confirmation, but they cannot be ordained into priesthood. That's Catholic.
In medieval times, though, how would they know that they're her?
No, this is that was starting at medieval times when they first became aware of it, up until modern canonists.
But how would they have known that someone is a hermaphrodite?
They would have had to have confessed it to somebody.
Yeah,
but you, unless you cut somebody open back then, you would have no idea if they had a penis.
That's what I mean.
And a uterus.
Yeah. So unless they went through a procedure, they would have to have they would have somehow have known it. Some do know because there are some exterior exposed orifices. So some would have known that they had both genders. And they would have had to have gone through some kind of confession.
And this is where I think we might need to do a little bit more research in what it takes to become a cardinal and or an archbishop within the Catholic Church, because they do medical things to make sure you're eligible as a male.
But that's the question is, what do they do? Like, especially in medieval times, all they can do to check if you're a man is basically.
I know what I mean.
Pants.
Like even today,
yeah,
like there are eligibility things, and one is being a female is not.
Yeah.
So
and
this is where it goes back to the idea of certainty. I'm going to quote, because I felt like the movie just wanted to make certainty like a bad thing, but
yeah.
Pope Benedict, when he gave his homily at the Conclave, his quote is, "The friendship of Jesus Christ and how we need to find certainty in an uncertain world." It's just a beautiful quote.
Yeah.
I'm like, certainty is not bad, even when it becomes between gender and all of that. And I'm speaking as the non-Catholic, so I'm just. So I feel like the movie wants the Catholic Church to be here progressively. I feel like that's what the movie's aim was at the end.
I agree,
and it's very well done.
Yeah, I thought so.
That's what I feel like, but it's not necessarily in line with all the Catholic doctrine.
There's nuance. Like there's certain things that took place with John Paul II,
mm-hmm.
Pope Benedict XVI, and now Pope Francis, that are very much in line with a lot of things that a lot of the more conservative crowd don't want to admit. Things like simple things, even. Let's go back to things like evolution. All three of them agree that evolution is fine, right? That evolution is a fact of science and nature. And so there's definitely tenets of that echo through the last several popes that people don't want to admit to.
Even last spring, Pope Francis on 60 Minutes was asked about women ordination. And they outright asked him, "Will you ordain deaconesses?" No.
Yeah. So I got to go back to this whole the idea that they've already had a contingency for an intersex person. All right. So what's the tiebreaker? Is the tiebreaker your chromosomes or is it your external genitalia? Because there are a lot of intersex conditions. You can have XX chromosomes and a penis, or you can have XY chromosomes and a vulva. So which one is it? What's a male? Or is it if you are presenting any characteristics of the opposite gender that would qualify you as intersex, you are not eligible for ordination?
And Keith, I don't think there's a clear answer to that right now, but I do believe there is a conversation on that.
Yeah, sure.
And that's what I think of the movie is the point it's making is that they can't be certain. Like technically having a micro penis is an intersex condition. So you could get to the point where you could say
that's for after dark.
If the bishop's external genitalia is not of a certain size, if the person's external genitalia is not of a certain size, they are not eligible to be ordained.
No,
and that's getting ridiculous.
No.
Isn't that getting ridiculous?
No, I mean, if you have a uterus, then there is room for doubt.
Yeah,
and if there's room for doubt, then there's reasonable dialogue to be having around whether you're eligible for being ordained in the priesthood.
But I'm saying there's technically room for doubt if your member is not long enough. So technically, yes, but it's an intersex condition.
I would disagree. Point Pope Benedict was like, that shouldn't even matter.
Exactly.
They get all the other things, including salvation. Why should the goal just be to want to ascend them to Pope?
Yeah.
But why should someone?
So hold on. So before you go further, Keith.
Okay.
Before you go further, one of the primary tenets of a Catholic household is to be able to create a family household. And in our evolution, both on the species level and on the theological level, has been to create a place where there is a mother and a father and children in propagation of the species. And so to merely align it with a penis versus a vagina negates the fact of propagation, because propagation is the primary emphasis of how we get to the next generation.
But priests, anybody ordained doesn't propagate. I mean, other than deacon.
Well, not necessarily true, because if you get to other parts of the priesthood, let's say Byzantine, for example, Byzantine priests have families. They are
not all of them. They don't have to.
They don't have to. Most of them do. Most Byzantine priests actually do have a wife. So, I mean, I'm just speaking purely out of what they're trying to convey to the public is to help the populace create healthy families that can create a population for the next generation.
But that's saying an intersex person can't be a member of a healthy family, isn't it?
I totally understand. And I think that's where the conversation's still open. So, and that's the thing, is that I don't think there's anything that's closed. I think there actually is conversation on how we progress to that next level.
But that's what I'm bringing up, is that Pope Benedict brought that up already. He's like, there is no issue around it other than that they are to be treated with compassion, kindness, and to receive every sacrament of the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
Every. They are not withheld from any.
Yeah.
Except for being ordained priest.
Yeah. So,
but that's not equality.
I mean,
it's not equality for an intersex person, a transgender person, or a female person.
If we had definitive proof that maybe one of the 12 disciples were, and I'm saying this is the non-Catholic here,
right?
But if one of the disciples had a doubt of being intersex, then we could have this conversation.
Because this was brought up by I forget what first it was, but it was one of the leading females inside of the Catholic. She's not really in the apologetic sphere, but she's in the media sphere.
Okay, I gotta know who it is. Do you remember the name?
I'm not gonna say the name. So,
public figure, you can say the name.
And she said the reason why we have males in the priesthood is because Christ put males in the priesthood. And that was really the whole idea behind it. And here's the thing. Jesus was actually very progressive for his time. So who's to argue with that? Because he himself put females very, very high on the level in his time. When, a rabbinical priest would say, go back to your kitchen, back to the kitchen, right? So,
well, let me just ask you guys this, because you guys are the Catholics and I'm not, but from a the line of authority, things being legitimate, quote unquote, point of view, and let's take the whole gender intersex thing off the table.
Okay.
Let's say a person gets, into archbishop role or cardinal, and something turns up where they weren't eligible for that role, but they'd been there for a long time until we found out this person had confessions, this person baptized, this person made other priests.
Yeah.
What are the implications for a person who had no legitimate right to do those things to begin with?
I would say,
level of, in terms of hierarchy and authority.
So that actually, those kind of similar things have happened in the church. And
well, what happens to those people then who were made priests?
They remained. They remained because they're still under the authority of whoever propagated them. So those illegitimate consecrations were still consecrated because they were done underneath consecration.
And that gets next to my original point, is even if someone had thought about this in the Middle Ages, there is still the possibility it could have happened. And there could have been someone who ordained people, and they did it in 900 AD. And there's a lineage that carries forward from an intersex person. We don't know.
There is a possibility. And the thing is we don't know. Yeah. But there is a possibility. But we will never know. At least at this time. Unless we exhume their body, grind up their bones, and pull their DNA, we'll never know.
Right. Right. But you know, according to your own tradition, the Catholic Church does know. They do know that there were.
We may.
And there was protocol and how to deal with it. I'm just citing Catholic tradition here. I'm not
There's so many threads here, and like as you were pointing out that it carries forward, like, you know, if there was, you know, because of the, I don't know, but like there actually is, not with ordination, but there is a recent counter example where they had to redo sacraments, and that was in Arizona. I think it was in Arizona. They had found that a priest had used like one wrong word during baptism that changed the meaning of if they were baptized in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and just in terms of like plain English.
Yes, there is, and that was,
I do remember that.
They had to conditionally redo all those baptisms. So they had to go back and tell like people of like 10, 20 years that all these people's baptisms were potentially invalid. They actually did that.
Yeah, or being blessed at birth, or etc.
Yeah,
that's the reason why I brought it up.
Yeah,
I'm like, well, let's say an intersex person gets to the Pope and has to do all of its whatever it does as a Pope, whatever duties they have. You know, what does that mean for everyone underneath them? I mean,
that is something that has not been questioned or answered yet.
Exactly.
Yep.
So I need to go back to like one point, an interesting juxtaposition between, okay, so we have this idea that the Catholic Church has said, okay, intersex people are being welcomed with compassion, but because your sex is potentially ambiguous, you cannot be ordained. That, in terms of how most modern apologetics, not just across Catholicism, but basically most conservative Christian sects today, argue against transgender people, this is actually a contradictory argument, because a lot of the arguments against transgenderism rely on this idea that intersex people don't actually exist as a philosophical construct. If you talk to like someone like Jason Everett, he will tell you that, which is as a Catholic, sex apologist person, chastity speaker, he will tell you that in every case of an intersex person, they've been able to identify it as one gender or the other ultimately. So if that were to carry forward as an argument in terms of ordination, the church would be able to say, oh, we can pick a gender and say whether they can be ordained or not.
This goes outside of our review of the movie.
Well, but no, because it's culturally relevant. This is what I want to talk about with this movie.
It is definitely.
Those are the questions that you're left with, because quite honestly, I was sucker punched at the end of the movie.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
you know, and I kind of was and I kind of wasn't.
Okay.
Because if I'm being fully honest here, from the first time they introduced Benitez at the beginning, I thought, and I'm just being fully honest, I'm on full disclosure, I thought the person was part of the trans community or the LGBTQ community.
Okay.
First time I saw the person, before I knew the ending of the movie.
Okay.
Interesting.
Okay.
But I, for a while there, Benitez kind of disappeared from the rest of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of brought back in, here and there.
Yeah, he punctuated into certain scenes.
Yeah. So it's like all of this movie and dynamics happened and this drama happened. And then at the end, it was like, wait, what? That's, and then for me, all the cards are showing at the end. I'm like, oh, man.
Almost like it's kind of trying to show a slight agenda.
It's a what ifism.
Yeah.
What aboutism?
So I got to talk about the agenda here. I did a little intellectual exercise about the movie. So what do we know about Benitez's intersex condition? All we know is that he thought for his whole life he was a male, and then he found out he had a uterus. I'm trying to think. We don't have any other facts about him, right?
That's all we know.
Okay. So based on all we know, I tried, because intersex refers to a whole blanket of different conditions that all have different identities. Some of them are like, you have different external genitalia and inhibition of certain hormones, and that creates, there's a misalignment between your chromosomes and your genitalia. There's conditions where you actually have extra chromosomes, and those, of course, often not only present in terms of intersex characteristics, but also other characteristics that you associate with folks who have extra chromosomes. So I try to theorize based on what we know, what possible intersex condition Cardinal Benitez has. So the first one I got to, which I'm kind of dubious on, was aromatase deficiency. So this person does not have the enzyme responsible for converting androgens into estrogens. And this person would basically, they could have an XX chromosome, and they would still technically have a labia, but it might be changed in a way that it might look like male genitalia. So I feel like this one is like maybe, but like
I doubt it.
It would rely on him like not being in locker rooms very much.
Yeah, and coming from the background he came from, he was definitely in locker rooms.
Yeah. So the next one is shoot, let me find it here. Okay, which one do I got here?
If you don't know, then obviously it was an exterior.
This is the one. Okay, this is the one I probably think is the most likely. It's called De La Chapelle syndrome, also known as XX male syndrome.
Did you say Dave Chappelle syndrome?
This variation causes a person with XX chromosomes to be born with a penis and testes. This usually happens because a particular gene, typically seen on Y chromosomes, known as SRY gene, ends up on one of their X chromosomes and causes the genitals and internal reproductive organs to develop as they typically would in someone with an XY chromosome. So that's my most likely one.
Okay.
My third one was ovotesticular DSD, which is basically you started developing both testes and ovaries at the same time. And it could be ambiguous as to which genitals you actually would end up with.
Well, Benitez had a uterus.
He had a uterus, but obviously it was not exterior.
Right.
Because he didn't know about it until he went for the appendectomy.
If you have a uterus, can't you have periods?
Apparently not. Because...
Not necessarily. A lot of intersex conditions result in sterility.
Yeah. He didn't know about it until he went for the appendectomy. He said that during the movie.
Yeah.
So where I'm going with this is so a linchpin of a lot of trans critical or gender theory critical ideology in churches rely, it starts from the idea that God created us male and female. When you actually go into the scientific process of what it means to become a male or a female in the womb, it's you basically start with the same like building blocks, and then certain like chemical signals fire at different times. And they fire not only in gestation, do they fire at certain times to create the initial internals and the external genitalia, and of course they fire at later times in puberty. And so it's not, yes, there's like a certain point where you get what your chromosomes are, which could be XX, XY, or technically like XXY, YYX. There's certain variations within that.
Lots of alphabets.
Yeah. So, but then later, there's all these different chemicals, and those could completely change how you're perceived of as male or female. So when we talk about God creating us male or female, and this being definitive, what we see in the actual evolutionary process that we assume God created is that we get maleness, femaleness shot at chemicals at different times. So what I think, and this is what I think gets in the agenda of the movie, if there is an agenda, is that pointing out the absurdity of gender segregation, of saying certain positions are related to a certain gender, because you're basically saying that whether you're eligible to be ordained comes down to what chemical signals were firing while you were being gestated, which is just like, it's random. It's not completely random, but it's like there's a million different variations of it. I mean, more maybe.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear.
I think it's pretty clear.
All my kids, I knew it 3 months.
It is 99% clear.
Yeah.
But even within that 99%, now you're talking about people who feel mentally like they are a male, and it's not just like, I wish I was a male instead of a female, or a female instead of a male. but it is a deep-seated thing to the point that they feel like they can't live. They feel like they might have to kill themselves.
But this is where I feel like the movie showed its cards a bit too early for me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, especially with his homily on certainty being a sin.
Yeah.
And I'm like, because it paved the way for that doubt at the very end to be like, oh, well, I guess it has to be a sin. There's no certainty in this.
But maybe that also ties the threads together, because like he's talking about certainty and uncertainty in general sense, and that there's like a lot of things we see and they seem plainly one way, but we actually have to like entertain some doubt.
Well,
and then going it back to this process, like this, the process of us being men or women.
Well, he quoted scripture, and that's where I felt like it got, like, man, he actually at this point now is using scripture of Christ to validate what I feel like the ending ended up being. And I'm like, man, that's a step too far.
And sometimes I feel the same way I felt back when I was an evangelical Christian. If you pull a verse out of scripture, it's very easy to say this is truth. But then we don't look at the chapter, the verse, the book, the context. And that's where I feel the greater sin is when we use scripture by pulling a verse instead of citing a chapter. And so I think that the greater sin of this is actually to use a little piece of something instead of the whole. Because the whole always has far more truth than a verse.
Yeah. Within the Catholic teachings and all of that, and again, I did a little bit of research into it because I wasn't aware of the subject, honestly. And the reasons why the Catholic teaching has been what it is, acknowledging people who deal with intersex, what they call disorders. I don't necessarily like that word.
Right. Yeah.
I feel like it's negative, but that's what they use.
I think it's probably due to a lack of better terminology.
Yeah. So, with intersex issues, they acknowledge it. Again, they get full sacraments and do all of that, but they have their limits.
Yeah.
And I think the movie erodes at the value of what it means for all of us human beings to have limits and to have boundaries, and that being a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. For instance, and this reverend, this Catholic, and we can look this up because I have his links. His name is Reverend Tadeusz Pachulowski. Anyways, he's Catholic.
And Polish.
He's done, yes. Yes, he is. He's done research into gender disorders within the Catholic Church in history. And he talks about, those limits and those guidelines and why they are the way they are within the Catholic Church. It's not out of stopping you from wanting to be the Pope. It's really out of love.
Yeah.
In a sense, it's really out of, I have autistic members in my family.
Yeah.
That I don't want driving me around. I don't want, whatever. There are limits. I wouldn't want them necessarily to be my lawyer in court.
Yeah.
What's this dude's name? I want to look him up later.
Yeah, I'll spell it out for you. I have it right here. I have his links. I'll actually email it to you.
Sounds good.
Remind me to do that. And so it's an idea out of love of all of us knowing our boundaries and our place. You wouldn't want a blind person being your driver.
Yeah.
Along those lines of thinking. So if there's any hint of doubt within the order of, what you were born with, which is a very small number.
Yeah.
That's why the Catholic Church wouldn't want that necessarily be the head of their teaching. It's not out of...
Yeah.
But I think it falls down a little bit where, like, if someone has a micro penis, it doesn't mean they're less capable of preaching and leading the church.
Yeah, but
so here's the thing.
But this isn't saying that in the the movie.
It's not saying it at all. So really back to the larger subject.
Larger subject. The larger member.
Where's the bell?
I think that what they're trying to convey is more compassion for more people, less discrimination. But
that's what I feel the aim was of the Catholic
Exactly.
Church in their teaching.
Yeah. More compassion, less discrimination, and let those people with clear guidelines guide the church. Put them in the steering wheel. There's certain things that, there's certain things I don't do because I know where I stand. Okay, there's certain, for lack of a better term, limitations I know I have. Okay, and so I stay in my guidelines. I know what I specialize in. I know the things I'm good at, and those are the things I let myself excel in. There are certain parameters I let myself excel in. I don't try to dive outside of that too far because others are very well educated on that subject. And so I let those people be the subject experts on that. And I think that there is definitely a proclivity towards a lot of people trying to be an expert on things they should not be experts on.
Yeah.
Let the experts be the experts in what they do. And you be the experts in what you are. And that creates the whole organism.
I need an example here. Are you talking about like experts on intersex conditions or experts on church doctrine or what?
Everything. Let's take just the human body by itself. Okay, the human body, because the human body is a galaxy. Okay, you have cells that their whole duty is to take the excrement of the other cells and take that to the lymph nodes. And you have cells that are part of the brain. You have cells that are just simply there to be bacteria in your colon. But every single piece of that is intrinsically important to make the mechanism work.
Yeah. I view that as an expression of love, really, honestly. Yeah. If I think about just what it means to be a fighter, that's why there are weight classes.
Yes.
See, when you mentioned like people being experts and staying in their lane, though, I thought of how there are doctrinal experts, or at least armchair doctrinal experts, and actually real doctrinal experts too, like actual like clergy people who are going into the lane of like gender biology, and they have no freaking clue. They do not know anything about transgender people. They do not know anything about intersex people. In fact, they are spreading lies about the science of those things and in service of promoting doctrine.
But here's the thing. There are outliers, and then there is the actual teaching of the church. The actual teaching of the church is going to be more broad.
Is a bishop an outlier?
Hold on. Yes. Actually, a bishop.
Bishop Malisic is an outlier.
Yes.
Our bishop is an outlier.
Yes. So bishops, yes, they are an outlier.
Because he's saying lies about transgender people.
Here's the thing. Hold on. Even
I don't know who this is.
Even a bishop.
The Bishop of Cleveland.
Even a bishop is an outlier. They speak for themselves and their own tenets and their own areas, but they do not become the teaching of the church unless the church adopts it. So there is a ton of cells in the body of the church. There is 1.2 billion Catholics in the world, okay? But only like 0.0009% of those are the teachers of the church. And the bishops are usually not inside of that. And there's a very finite amount of people that do the teaching of the church because the teaching must be broad and the teaching must encompass everybody. And that's why there's a very finite amount of people allowed to be the teachers to the church. And when I say church, I mean the 1.2 billion people that are the church. And you have to understand that that is for the betterment of the church. It has to be a little more broad. It cannot be intrinsically one person.
But if they speak falsehoods, is that bettering the church? They speak biological, like scientific falsehoods.
There's always going to be somebody who does that, though. There's always going to be a cancer cell in the body.
I mean, we can even go outside transgenders, and we can talk about Bishop Corleone and vaccines.
That's fine.
I shouldn't say the V word.
Again, there's always going to be a cancer cell in the body, right? The thing is that the body has to produce more healthy cells than free radicals.
But
in the case of the U.S., though, 2/3 of the bishops, by my criteria I just specified, are cancer.
We'll talk about that at a later.
But let me ask this:
later time.
What's wrong with accepting, our place in life and the way we are?
Well, I think this gets back to the point of the movie: is that I think the message is that defining the place as like this gender can be this thing and this gender cannot be this thing. It's pointing out that's a absurdity from a biological perspective.
Okay, what I feel like the movie is doing, here's what it's doing, in my opinion. It's taking one very small example to a way extreme of what it should, in this director, who's the director, Berger?
I think so, yeah.
And what it
Berger,
should be.
Yeah.
In other words, because, I'm not tall, but I feel like I have the right, like every other tall person in the NBA, to play in the NBA. So I expect every other NBA player to play so they accommodate me.
Right.
Don't be as rough. Don't be as, don't block all my shots. Let me score just enough so I can be a participant. And that's what I feel like this is doing. Instead of saying, hey, I can still enjoy basketball.
Yeah.
On my own. I can still love the game. I can still, do whatever thing. I don't have to be an NBA player, simply because I was not born that tall.
But height is intrinsically important to your ability to be an NBA center. Your gender is not intrinsically important in terms of your quality as a preacher.
Well, my point is that this lady Benitez, or I'm sorry, oh my gosh, wow, that was a Freudian slip.
Well, actually, what is she? What is he?
Okay,
is he a lady or is he man?
So I thought
Matt Walsh wants to know.
Honestly, you know what, that was a Freudian slip, but it was a truthful slip because I thought it was a lady. I thought it was a lady at first, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
That was transgender. I'm like, all right.
But he wasn't.
Yeah. No, I was wrong.
Does anybody else have Aerosmith going through their head right now?
Stop it. Stop it.
What's wrong with Benitez being I think the irony of it is, I think if, they would have said, Benitez, you've served the Catholic Church. You're an amazing. We'll make you a saint. You got all the privileges of every sacrament of the church, etc., etc., etc. Is it okay if you never become Pope? I think Benitez would have said, yeah.
I agree with you.
I wish I could remember the name of the author. An author actually addressed this in the 60s about the tenants. Basically,
the book came out in 1916. I mean 2016. 2016.
No, but I'm talking about in the 60s. Someone was talking about the concept that Gumby led, which is another thread, which is this idea that we actually, like the Catholic Church and really Christendom in general, will put women on a pedestal like sainthood, and use that as an excuse not to put them in leadership.
I get it, and I will again.
Well, I don't feel like that. None in the movie didn't have any.
No,
leadership.
that's not really anything to do with it.
And this is a movie review. Doggone it!
It's in a cultural cornerstone.
Yeah, I mean.
So again,
which we should probably wrap up.
I thought that the movie had some very good points. I thought that it was provocative.
Only at the end.
At the end, it was very provocative.
It did go from 0 to provocative really quick, which is a little awkward.
Honestly, I never felt 0. I thought that the movie did a very good job at keeping a thriller element throughout, a psychological thriller throughout. It really did a nice job conveying that. The
cinematography was gorgeous.
Fantastic.
Oh my gosh,
incredible!
It was spot on the entire time. Yeah. I mean, the filmography was directed. The lighting was beautiful. Everything was just
quality of the acting, the dialogue,
fantastic.
No doubt. I don't question any of that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it was beautiful.
Simply the ending, I was like, oh, where did that come from?
But this is a movie review. So we're gonna wrap up. Gonna be last thoughts.
Oh, there's nothing taboo over Brew, man. Go watch the movie if you haven't seen it. It's worth watching, even if you walk away feeling like whatever. But it's a beautiful movie.
I would call it a solid B plus because I think it is a little bit hand wavy in some of the complex interactions it's trying to describe, and it does get to that end a little too quick. I think we will talk about it for years in the future because I think for a lot of people who haven't considered it before, especially as we're learning more about the distinction between sex and gender and how sex itself is actually occurs biologically in people, like people will start to wonder, like, oh, have there ever been any technically women bishops? So I think it'll be in the imagination for a long time.
Yeah. So again, I loved the movie for everything. The cinematography was gorgeous, acting gorgeous. Please visit us on all of our social media. We are coming out with a whole brand new format for the new year, 2025. This is Aaron, Kru Juice Viverka, now 50 years old, enjoying
So old.
everything life has to offer.
You look like you're 30, man.
Well, thank you, sir. There is anything but beautiful, beautiful people.
Yep.
Godspeed. Good night.
Peace out.
Peace out.